Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? Today, I am without my sister. She is doing stuff. She can't be part of this podcast, but I do have a guest. My guest today is someone that I've known throughout my life in the peripherals. She's kind of, our orbits have been close to each other, but we've never really fully connected. So this is a chance for us to do that. As you know, a lot of my past has been peppered with religious experiences, and a lot of those have been somewhat traumatic. I noticed this dangling extension cord. That's pretty cool, hey? Got to work on my set. Anyway, so Kim is, she's a fantastic singer. We talk a bit about that, and I'll have links in the description to her music, but she's also a practitioner, and she works with folks that have come out of some type of religious trauma, which I found very interesting given some of the conversations that have come up on this podcast so far. So we explore all of that, and she's an interesting person and has an interesting past, as do everyone. Everyone has an interesting story to tell. I think when we live with ourselves, we think our story is somewhat mundane, but it's not true. And we find that out, don't we, as we dive into these combos. So I really hope you enjoy this one. Please subscribe to the channel. Please share it with your friends. We really appreciate your commitment, and we really hope that we're bringing some enjoyment to your life. So without further ado, let's dive into this conversation with Miss Kim Johnson. So thanks for making the time. I was thinking before we got on, I was like, Kim and I, our kind of orbits have been somewhat in the same neighborhoods, but I think I've only personally met you once. You came to your house in Winnipeg.
That's right. I remember that.
Yeah, with a team I was coming through town with. I couldn't remember if it was a mission trip or band.
Yeah. You crashed on the living room floor, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, we were constantly bringing teams through. It was either my band touring, or it was when I was running a discipleship school. We were going to the Inuit or First Nations or whatever.
Right.
Up there. Yeah.
Yes. Those were the days when people were always crashing on the floor, and you never knew if you'd have any space to yourself because the house was just always full and bustling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The good old days.
Yeah.
When we were poor and had lots of community.
Yeah.
So you are a somatic practitioner for religious trauma.
I am. It's my new position. I just started doing that about 1.5 years ago. And it's been amazing.
Which is interesting. So, I mean, maybe we should just kind of go back a little bit in history and kind of talk about, obviously you wouldn't have got into this line of work unless you were interested in it and had an experience probably with some type of religious trauma.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you started, what's your journey into that world?
Well, I grew up evangelical. Even that's a long story because my parents didn't really raise us that way, but my brother and I, we would go to this Alliance Church when we were kids to go to the Sunday school program. And then eventually I got really involved in the youth group, and, you just kind of come up in that world. And so I kind of got on that church train at the age of, I don't know, probably seriously at the age of 12 when I went to a Christian camp and got all the messaging about how if you really wanted to truly live for God, that you needed to, do this and this and that. And so, of course, I wanted that. I was always a seeker. I wanted, I was I think, naturally spiritually minded. And so that's the framework I was given. And so I got on the train and rode it until I had a faith crisis at about the age of 25 or 26. And really, a lot fell apart. I was an internationally touring worship leader at the time, so I wasn't able to do that anymore. I really lost a lot of friends and a lot of community, partly because I pulled away from that world and no one really followed me,
Hmm.
and partly because just a lot of the really strong messaging. My cat's going to drive me bonkers here. The really strong messaging I just couldn't subscribe to anymore. So it's just hard to be around that, especially in the beginning when I didn't really have my own footing in what I believed.
So
So
was that Winnipeg then? Because
it was, yeah, Winnipeg.
wow, we were young, hey, back then. Jeez, that was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Gee, that's crazy. So, yeah, because you were heavily involved in the Winnipeg movement. I was heavily involved in the Kamloops, and then before that, the TACF, which I think you maybe went there with Rick Leaf, right? Like the Toronto Airport Vineyard.
No, I never experienced that movement, but are we calling it a movement? But I got kind of the people that trickled out of that community. So
Mm,
I definitely heard a lot of stories. And right after that, I met Rick Leaf, who was on your show here.
yeah,
And he's a good friend of mine. And yeah, didn't experience the airport. But now I work with people who are recovering from that. So that's
no
interesting.
way.
Hmm.
No way. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
I have a few people.
I was a worship leader there. I was a youth pastor there. I was kicked out of that church, excommunicated, because I got divorced in that church,
Oh,
married
right. That's
and
not allowed.
divorced. Yeah, John Arnott was at my wedding, Kim Unruh, all of those guys. Um, but let's not talk about my story because we're talking about you. So you in Winnipeg, you were like with David Ruiz, and I remember you on a lot of worship CDs. Like you got a powerful. I remember your voice. I was talking to my sister Abigail, and I'm like, "Do you know Kim Johnson?" She goes, "Oh yeah, like she has an amazing voice." And
Mhm.
Abigail's not in the church either right now, but or anymore. Um, but yeah, distinct, powerful singer, and you were in lots of those big worship albums, right?
Yeah, I was in a few. There was a very vibrant arts community there that I was part of. So definitely got into some of that and was able to, do some songwriting for some compilation albums and things like that. And that was
Fra-
kind of my life for a while.
Fragrant Oil, were you in that one?
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's embarrassing.
Fragrant.
Yeah, I mean, a little side note is I remember recording that one and then them saying that I would be able to do vocal fixes afterwards because it was recorded live. And as any musician knows, if
Yeah.
something is recorded live, you need to fix some of the pitchy stuff.
Uh-huh.
But I never got to fix it. I came home from summer holidays and it was released. So I have literally never been able to listen to that album.
Because of that.
Yeah.
Probably only you hear it.
I'm
The,
not sure that's true, but yeah, that was a really long time ago. That was my first experience of recording.
yeah.
And you're probably the only other person in my whole world who would have ever heard of that album.
Really? Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Um, so Winnipeg was where you started to have this like questioning of everything and things weren't making sense. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, Winnipeg was where it happened, and I don't necessarily think that community in itself was toxic for me, but I had come from a very toxic upbringing, especially in my teen years. I'd grown up in this church called Full Gospel Tabernacle in Kamloops, BC, and lots of toxicity there, lots of really terrible doctrine and belief systems that I accumulated
Hmm.
in that community. And so I would have to say that that's where I sort of pin most of my religious trauma on that
Really?
church. Yeah.
So is the leadership and because it's interesting, right? Like like as far as overall beliefs, like Toronto Airport Vineyard, the Winnipeg Church, the full gospel, name any of them, right? Thousands of them. It seems to be the human element. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know what your situation is, but it's the human element that can really make one church polar opposite than another as far as your
Mhm.
experience goes and far as if
Mhm.
that's my experience anyway. It was
Mhm.
humans trying to wrangle uh I don't know, create an empire,
Mhm.
control
Mhm.
God,
Yeah, that's a
control
good way to
people.
say it.
Yeah.
Yeah. or just use their dynamic narcissistic personalities to sort of get
Mm.
a whole bunch of people in their, in their sphere and ramp up the energy. Yeah. And so for me, it was very personal. It was for a long time. I remember a mentor in my early teens had answered a few of my questions. It said, this doesn't make sense, and this doesn't make sense. And she'd
Mm.
said, what I like to do is when you encounter something in the Bible that you don't understand, just say, okay, God, I'm going to put it up here on this shelf. And that was calming for my nervous system at the time. Just this idea that I could sort of suspend that question for now.
Mm.
But after a while, I could feel that shelf getting heavier and heavier and heavier.
Mm.
And I would say when I was 25 or 26, around that time, the shelf just like it couldn't hold anymore.
Mm.
And I couldn't deny that there were too many things that didn't make sense to me. And then I started to, because I was part of I would say, beautiful community, even though there's some things that were harmful. I did have some good friends in that community, and I started to voice, and this is when I started to realize how subtly controlling religious communities can be. I remember I was in a meeting and I started to voice my confusion. And so the question I remember I had at the time was, everybody says that it's so clear that Jesus is God, but I don't actually see it clearly at all. Like, can someone explain to me what I'm missing? And we had a conversation about it, and no one answered to my satisfaction. To me, it still seemed very gray. And I
Mm.
said as much. I said, that doesn't seem clear to me. And after the meeting, one of the people in leadership that was at the meeting took me aside and said, Kim, I feel from the Lord to tell you that if you go down this road, your very soul is at stake. And in that moment, I remember laughing because I was so sure that any God
Mm.
that was not flimsy and not
Mm.
hollow would be okay with my questions. And that it felt ridiculous in that moment that my soul would be at stake for asking questions. And
That's
that was
funny.
the dividing line for me. It was
Wow.
like, I can't be in this space anymore.
Mm.
I can see that, eh, it's really, I don't want to say it's not safe, but psychologically, it really wasn't safe. And then very soon after, I miraculously disappeared from the worship schedule, the worship leading schedule, and kind of stopped getting invited to things. And
Oh, man.
you just know how it goes after that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have multiple stories because I was in and out of these kind of church movement things. And um, I was probably just a royal pain in the ass to these because it feels to me looking like it's so interesting hearing everybody's story. And because they're so similar, like it feels to me like, especially charismatic Christianity or movements, they are moving in a direction, right? Like revival is coming, God is coming, and so there's this like fast moving train that you're aboard, which is exciting for a young person because it's like, okay, this is happening. It's not like a stale, stagnant train that's in the station. It's a train that's going somewhere. But anyone who slows that down by asking a question, I don't know if Jesus is God, like I don't understand this relationship, or it seems to be like there, just hush up and quiet down. Like it no one's got the time to say, hang on a minute, like Kim's got a valid question here. Let's stop the train. Let's talk about this. Like but it's like, no, that question is slowing the train down. It's slowing the move down, and it's a pain in the ass. And it's like, we're going somewhere. I mean, I remember that same feeling that you had of kind of laughing inside when I left my first wife in Toronto. And it was It was a story that I've told a few times, so I'm not going to go into depth, but it felt very like the church was pushing us to get married. Like, you're the first marriage of the renewal. You're the savior of
Yeah, I've seen that.
Allison. You're saving Allison from, and inside I had all these alarm bells. And anyway, when I realized I couldn't do it anymore, after literally 4 months of being married, Kim Unruh, I think John Arnott, came to my work site and were like, "What are you doing?" Like, had this like look of horror. Like, do you realize that you're throwing your faith away? And I said this to them, and I was like, I know I don't understand God, and I'm sure He's not super stoked with what I'm doing, but I know for sure He hasn't turned His back on me. I just feel it. I'm like, I kind of laughed inside too. I had this kind of like, that's not the relationship I have. So I'm sorry, but it completely does not have the traction that you're hoping it does with me. Because I think they were trying to fear monger me back into the fold by saying, hey, you could lose your faith here. But it had the opposite. I didn't have that effect at all. And it sounds like you had the same type of something in your heart that said, yeah, no, doesn't strike a chord with me.
Yeah, no, that didn't sound true at all. Have you ever heard the expression thought terminating cliches?
No.
There's this wonderful book called Cultish. So cult and then ish, like English, cultish.
Okay.
And the author introduced me to so many wonderful terms in terms of the environment of a high control, high demand, group think. And I think something that really saved me early on was I was doing The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. You familiar with that book? And she, in The Artist's Way, she brings in this idea of a toxic God concept. And it kind of blew my mind at first. Now it seems very simple, but she introduced me to this idea that was totally foreign to me before, that God is actually a concept. And the concept that that person over there has in his head about God could be vastly different from the concept that this person over here has about God. Could be vastly different from the concept that I have in my head about God. And so understanding that we have different concepts of God in our head, and then we see the world through that lens of whatever God concept we have, was very liberating for me. And it enabled me to kind of have more choice. Like, do I want to believe in a God that says, and I mean, saving for later the conversation of if I even use the word God anymore in my own personal life. I don't really that much, but at the time, just the idea that, it allowed me to just like look a little closer and go, okay, do I want the concept of God that God is not okay with questions? No, that sounds ridiculous. Do I want the concept of God that God is always looking down on me and like crossing his arms and kind of nitpicking me? No, I don't want that. So it allowed me to kind of throw out toxic God concepts and bring in more supportive ones. And so in that moment when she said that, I realized it's not the kind of God I believe in. So yeah. And then, I mean, that was the beginning. And then some things in my life started to unravel. My marriage tanked because as I was going deeper into looking for what I felt was true, he went deeper into fundamentalism and evangelicalism. And we literally pulled away and became strangers to one another. And so eventually my marriage ended. And awkwardly, we moved to a different city. So I didn't really even have the container of my old city. So kind of things just fell apart for a while. But what really began to show me that I was experiencing a kind of trauma from those days of growing up religious and growing up with certain belief systems was that I was feeling like I couldn't really do life. Like I had such a block around getting employment because I had this very inflated sense of like having been called of God that had been placed in me from the full gospel days.
Mm.
I was in this youth group with a really dynamic youth group leader, and the thing that we heard over and over and over, I remember him saying this from the front. If you give your life to Jesus, if you go so hard for Jesus, you're going to be ruined for the things of this world, he used to say. And I was like totally ruined for the things of this world. Like I didn't even feel okay about, say working at a bakery, which is what I eventually did. And I had a lot of stress response around it. So
Hmm.
just unwinding like belief systems like I'm called of God. What does that mean?
Mm.
What did that mean? What did that give me? And what did that form in me to think that I had like a calling of God on my life? And I was told that it had to look a certain way. And different, like here's a big one. I remember when I was 16 or 17, there was a visiting evangelist that came in to our church, and it was a youth rally, and there's like the smoke machines and the bands playing, and it's just really, really heightened energy. And the evangelist from the front said, "Who here would even be willing to go so hard for Jesus that you'd be willing to be a martyr?" And I put up my hand. And when I was sitting in meditation a couple years ago, and for me, my path has been depression, curled up in a fetal position, unable to really engage with life for, I mean, not all the time, but that's been my go-to, just like paralysis depression. And
Mhm.
I was sitting in meditation a couple of years ago. This memory spontaneously came up, and I was able to look at it through the lens of like, now, I'm a mother of two teenage girls. I have some training in childhood development. And I was able to see that clearly, this belief that was instilled in me that my life actually didn't matter that much. My death mattered more. My
Mm.
life wasn't even really valuable unless I was serving Jesus.
Mhm.
And so for me, I think that was one of the big traumas because I left the concept of Jesus and the concept of God behind. But what did I fill that spot with?
Mm.
So for me to undo that belief and to distill it into like a phrase like, wow, I believe that my life's not valuable. That enabled me to move toward believing what I wanted to believe, which is that my life has value
Mhm.
and I don't have to do anything to earn it. It's just I have value simply because I'm here and I have breath in my lungs and I have a beating heart
Mhm.
and I have value and I don't have to be anything other than what I am in this moment. And so that's the kind of thing that made me want to work with actually religious trauma because they're very subtle things. It's not like, oh, this pastor abused me. Or, I mean, I can't think of, a lot of people think that religious trauma is like a pastor being a total asshole to them.
Yeah.
Or,
The Catholic choir boy scenarios, or
yes,
the really
exactly.
dramatic. You know.
Yeah. Or like a youth pastor grooming a girl.
Right.
It's more subtle. It's about indoctrination. It's about belief
Mm.
systems. And those really fascinate me. And I've had to unwind a lot of them for myself.
Yeah. I think someone said to me, like, spiritual abuse is almost more damaging than sexual abuse because, and I don't remember who said that to me, because when you're dealing with what happens after you die through the lens of a narcissistic leader or whatever it might be, like a yeah, a human who can fuck things up for you, it's that, and that's stripped from you, by these questions, by being like, all of a sudden it's like, what, I'm not going to be a martyr. None of this stuff actually is going to happen. And it was all kind of fake and smoke and mirrors. It can leave you feeling so alone and so empty. Like it really, because then you're questioning the afterlife, and you're questioning, your relationship with God, which is really, really intimate, right? Because it's nothing more intimate than what happens after you die, you know? And that was all tangled up in it. And,
Yeah.
I totally agree. It's this death, almost like this death of 1,000 cuts, this wounding of 1,000 words. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I know that are wounded in battle. you know, you know, I mean, if someone said to me, the other day, well, we did have some good times though, right? Like there was some good moments there. And I'm like, the trail of dead that is left behind does not come even close to what you call, how you value those good times.
Mm-hmm.
The bad times way outweigh, in my opinion, the good.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these people, like you say, are just like we were groomed to believe that, yeah, we were going to get martyred before we were 30. I was pulled into all of that as well. And then when it all suddenly doesn't happen, revival doesn't happen, people don't get up out of their wheelchairs, the dead aren't raised from, people aren't raised from the dead, and you realize that you're totally flat broke because you never were taught to invest money or to work a real job and to save or whatever it might be. The disillusionment that sinks in is bonkers. When you're like,
Yeah.
now I got to start all over. None of that. I can't even.
Mm-hmm. Our meaning-making mechanisms are really hijacked in our developmental years.
Hmm.
So when we're supposed to be developing meaning in the world in our teen years, it's a natural developmental stage to look around and go, what has meaning for me? Where do I want to invest my time into things that have meaning? We are being told what has meaning.
Hmm.
Not only are we being told what should have meaning, but we're being told that what authentically has meaning for us shouldn't. An example of this in my own life is I remember from a very young age, nature really mattered to me.
Hmm.
And I was told that I shouldn't love that more than Jesus.
It's new age.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really, right?
I don't know. Yeah. But I wasn't supposed to love that more than Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, just there's so much wrong with that statement. Like, separating nature and God, which are completely interwoven for me now.
Yeah.
But so we're told that what authentically has meaning for us, maybe it's art, maybe it's music,
Hmm.
that should not have meaning, or if it does have meaning, it should only be unto God's glory.
Yeah.
Or unto the purpose of serving God's people or whatever.
Hmm.
And then we're told that this should have meaning. And if it doesn't, you should just cram it in there. So one of my favorite lines is about trauma, and it applies to religious trauma too, is by Gabor Mate. And
Yeah.
he says, trauma at its core is a disconnection from the genuine, authentic self. Whether it's physical abuse, whether it's a soldier seeing someone blown up in the war, at its core, in our bodies, it's a disconnection from our genuine, authentic self.
Right.
And trauma healing is a reconnection with the true, authentic self.
Hmm.
So I feel like that really points to what happens, the harms of religion, what that does. So I don't know how you experience this in your body, but like one of my clients and I were talking the other day about different songs that we sang over and over. We affirmed these things over and over in the songs that we sang.
Hmm.
And one of the songs that came up for her, and we pulled up the lyrics and we looked at the words, is that there's a song, As the Deer Panteth.
For the water.
I don't know if yeah. So it's like based on a psalm.
Yeah.
Totally. I
Oh
know.
man, you got that in my head now. Damn it.
Well, I know we're going to have to sing like Eye of a Tiger before we go because
Yes. Still
something
on.
else annoying to get in our heads.
Yeah.
But so we looked at the lyrics, we pulled up the words, and It's like, as a deer pants for streams of water, so my soul longs after you. You, O Lord, are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. Well, what if that wasn't your authentic experience? What if your heart's desire was like to be alive and play music and to walk in the hills and like pet your dog and like just love people, and you didn't really connect so much with like, you, oh Lord? I mean,
Mm.
keeping in mind that, oh Lord, and all that, that's a concept.
Mm.
So I experience that as, I'm going to take this thing that I don't really connect with, that doesn't feel genuine and authentic, and I'm just going to like shove it in there. I'm going to like say it so many times that even I believe it.
Mm.
I really do believe that part of the trauma of religious communities is that there's just a lot of people walking around with like suppressed authentic desires, and
Mm.
then these crammed in desires that we've just said so many times before
Mm-hmm.
until we believe that they're true. And we're just very, the communities are very disconnected. And then disconnected people create disconnection
Yeah, I mean,
in
I think
various ways.
my own journey is years and years and years and years and years of trying to detangle all of that. Like exactly what you're talking about. This denial of trying to understand who am I and what do I actually like. It's taken so long, and I'm not even there yet. It's just like detangling all of that. Like I remember when I met my wife, and she introduced me to recycling. And I was like, I had never, and I'm in my like 30s, and I had never considered taking care of the environment. Like it was
Right.
like, and she introduced me to this, and I was like kind of scoffed at it. And I was out of the church, but I still had a lot of the church beliefs,
Yeah.
which was a real denial of yourself, like deny yourself and take up your cross. And this is all going to burn anyway, so to hell with it. And so
Mm-hmm.
we didn't used to eat healthy. That was never a thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
eating healthy, fitness, taking care of the environment, all of those things in the circles that we were at. I'm sure there are churches that do practice all those things, but
Right.
my experience was a complete denial of acknowledging any of that. And I remember mocking this whole, recycling thing and noticing the whales and all this type of stuff. And now I've changed a lot, but I realized that, holy crap, like I was almost like a religious redneck, you know,
Yeah.
because what's the point in taking care of the world? Because we're going to be martyred anyway in 5 years. So what the heck, to hell with it?
Mm-hmm.
What's the point in, investing your money? What's the point in eating healthy or taking care of your body? Or,
Mm-hmm.
it was all, yeah. So it's been a long time of like detangling all of those kind of doctrines and that have been pounded into us.
Mm-hmm. And
And
I
then
found that
the problem is it's the chaser of that drink is like, this is God's will. So you put that on top and it really concretes that in, like, because now
mm-hmm.
going against that is going against God. And
Yeah,
that's like
exactly.
really scary for someone who believes, and it took me a long time to not be scared of thinking that God was going to strike me dead, for walking away from him or doing quote unquote worldly things or whatever. And so, yeah.
Well, it's scary because it's a threat. It's not
Mm-hmm.
framed as such, but underneath that, if you word it a different way, if you don't do this, you will be a disappointment to God. Not just a disappointment to this person over here, but a
Mm.
disappointment to God. Like, have you ever heard of the bite model of authoritarian control?
No.
It's really fascinating to look at. So, um, the bite model of authoritarian control is just kind of a guideline for understanding controlling relationships and controlling communities. And um, Dr. Stephen Hassan first kind of named these four aspects, but it's really wild the first time you read this and think of how it could be an abusive relationship or it could be a corrupt government, or it could be a church. So the first one is it's BITE. Bite is how manipulative groups regulate and dominate their members' actions and behaviors through strict rules, rewards, and punishments, and limiting of individual autonomy. So with like in an abusive relationship, that would be people, like a partner withdrawing love. But with church, it's like we're told that God will withdraw his approval or his love or his blessing. I remember that was a huge one for me.
Yeah.
I was always trying to stay in line, afraid that God was going to remove his blessing from me. And then the next one is I, and it's how manipulative organizations control information flow through censorship, propaganda, and restricting members' access to outside perspectives. And there's not overt restriction in church, but it's very subtle. It's restricted through shame, through what you just said, like kind of a subtle messaging of, oh, if you care about the environment, you're worldly. Why would you want to be worldly? You've got your eye on the wrong thing. Put your eyes back on Jesus, not on the things that will pass away in the world. I mean, what you just shared about the environment, that was my experience. That is the experience of so many of the people that I work with. I work with like not just one, but several people who say, I realize I didn't actually think that I'd still be alive right now, because I thought that Jesus was going to return. I'm really stunned that I'm like 45 and I'm still alive.
Yeah.
It's a real, like across the board common experience.
Really?
Anyway, so the T is thoughts, psychological techniques used by groups to shape beliefs and attitudes, suppress critical thinking, and promote conformity. I mean,
Sounds
we
like a country
recognize that.
I know. A couple countries I know.
Yeah, but also some churches that we know.
Yeah.
And then emotion is how manipulative organizations manipulate emotions, fostering dependency and loyalty through love bombing, guilt, and fear-based indoctrination.
Love bombing. That's an interesting one. I run a business, and my bookkeeper, he says that, he says, beware the clients that love bomb. And he's so it's every time, I love your company so much and I can't wait to work with you, and blah, blah, right off the bat when we first meet them.
Yeah.
10 times out of 10 they crash and burn royally.
Yeah, I have a lot of red flags around love bombing as well.
Yeah.
But what you said about your friend saying, oh, there were some good things, I used to think that too. For a long time, I was trying to, it felt like it was a big snarl, and I was trying to like unwind the good things, and then so I could throw out the bad things.
Right.
But what I think now is all the good things were already inherently mine. And I learned this when I studied yoga. And I studied Eastern practices and spiritual beliefs, and especially the chakra system, which at first was like super triggering to me, because the chakra system is like, oh my God, stay away from the chakra system. It's new age. But the chakra system is basically the Eastern perspective on human development versus the Western perspective, which is a lot like it's 75 years old versus thousands of years old.
Right.
And the Western perspective is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which you're probably familiar with that. But the Eastern perspective of the chakra system is that we have 7 birthrights, and each birthright coincides with each chakra. The first chakra is between the age of 1 and 6, and the birthright is, I have a right to be here. And the second one is in our early teens, late childhood, early teens, and it is, I have a right to feel. And then the third one is teenage years, I have a right to act. The fourth one is in, early adulthood, I have a right to love and be loved. The fifth one is I mean, it stops being important age-wise later on, but the fifth one is I have a right to speak my truth. The sixth one is I have a right to see, to see deeper truth. And then the fifth one, or the seventh one, I should say. Did I say six right here? And then the seventh one is I have a right to know. And there's different teachings in the Eastern traditions that coincide with these chakras. And this is something that really liberated me to learn this, that we need the lower ones to come to the higher ones. So the higher, more expansive states up here, like intuition, and this up here, the seventh one is like, I'm connected to the whole universe. Like I am someone, some of the one, the Kabbalah would say. And so these expansive states up here need to be grounded by the ones below. And so we need to develop a sense of, I have a right to be here in the first chakra. And that has to do with grounding, feeling safe, feeling like we belong to life. Well, hello, like, I don't know about you, but when I was like 6 and I heard that if I don't believe a certain way, I'm going to go burn in hell forever, that definitely compromised my sense of safety. And I have a right to be here. So it starts really young in fundamentalist doctrines. And then I definitely know that the second one, I have a right to feel. I mean, that's not really supported in our culture, but then especially in church, I had a lot of belief systems given to me about how my emotions were sinful, they were wrong, I should rebuke them, I should set them aside. They were at least, not important, and sometimes they were very wrong. So I didn't learn to process my emotions. We in these spaces, we don't learn to process our emotions. We don't learn that they're good. We learn to call them bad. And then the third one, I have a right to act. Well, we're taught that our will should be set aside for the will of God. And in Eastern spirituality, that aspect of like surrender and surrendering your will, it fits up here in the higher chakras, but it's meant to be built on top of like a solid framework of, I have a right to be here, I have a right to feel, and I have a right to act. And that reframe for me was really important because there were aspects of, I guess, more expansive states that I encountered once in a while in church spaces. And for me, that was really confusing because leaving, I had less of them for a while. And that was disorienting to have to leave some of the good stuff. And I'm saying all of this to say that when I started to learn about other contemplative perspectives, I saw that all of the things that I loved about Christianity, they were mine innately. I didn't have to do anything to get them. What toxic Christianity does is it says, you want those things? Here, sign on the dotted line, agree to this, and then you will get it. Then you will be safe if you have Jesus. Then you will be whole if you accept this. You will be loved if you're on God's team. But like safety, wholeness, belonging, being beloved of life, those are aspects that I found in Eastern mysticism. And those were the things that I loved about Christianity. So yeah, I used to think there were good things. And now I just think, I think people just tried to colonize those good things that were mine to begin with and tried to put a price tag on them.
Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, when I look back on my time in those environments, for a long time, I had a level of embarrassment, almost shame. I was embarrassed that I got suckered in so deep and so hard. And shame because I was in leadership. So I was groomed to be like some of these really toxic leaders that we now are recovering or recovered from some of the damage. I was in training. So I had to do a lot of these, and it's embarrassing, some of the stuff, and it definitely felt at times that I was going against the grain. Um, you know, I mean, one of the things that one of the only treasures that I take from all of that, and the thing that I miss, if anything, was when I bumped into you right in Winnipeg. I was on my way to work on these reservations, and they were the most brutal in Canada. You know, Shamattawa, Pekanchikam, you know, where
Mm-hmm.
you know, nurses had to sleep in their bathtubs. There were drive-by shootings every night. That was the absolute pinnacle highlight, across, like hands down. And I got to go into those communities, and thankfully, I think they're looking back there, I got to be myself, because none of the leaders would come. It was me. I was bringing these students. We were running a discipleship school, and I would take them out there. And all the students would say to me, how come when we're out here and it's -40 and we're in an old beat up van and it's breaking down on the ice road and you're like laughing, you're so happy. And, but back at the church, you're kind of miserable. And looking back now, I realize that I was like out from under that authoritarian kind of thing that I was confused about. There's so much confusion, but I didn't have, a platform. I wasn't allowed to unpack it because that was
Mm-hmm.
so I had to suppress it over for
Mm-hmm.
years. The same, you know what I mean? And when I got out
Mm-hmm.
there was no one. I wasn't accountable to anybody,
Mm-hmm.
and all we did was hung out with these kids. We didn't preach to them. We didn't do anything. We just hung out in the bush and just joked and laughed, and that's all we did. And it was
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, beautiful. Um,
Yeah,
but for
just
the
being
most
human.
part, yeah, I mean, but the most of it, it's like kind of embarrassing. You know, some of the stuff we would do. Um,
Yeah.
and I do have, I don't know if you have regret. No, regret's not the best, but I have a lot of regret because I feel like I wasted a lot of time.
Mm.
Um, and
Yeah. That is definitely an emotion I have had to work through.
yeah.
And I'm super curious. So I'm really fascinated about, like, I'm studying shame right now.
Mm,
And you're saying that you have like embarrassment, regret. And I'm kind of filtering that through what I've been reading about shame. And from what I understand, like guilt is um, a, a natural response to, like, it says, I did something wrong. I did something wrong. And I think that's appropriate here to say, I did something wrong. I overrode my own sense of what was kind and what was loving and what was appropriate. And I told people they needed to believe a certain thing in order to be acceptable to God. That's I'm going to call that wrong, and if I ever did that. And shame is I am wrong. And
mm,
I like that differentiation. Guilt is I did something wrong. Shame is I am wrong, because then we can see the difference and go, oh, well, like what I'm feeling is an appropriate amount of guilt. And I can choose to never do that again. I can choose to apologize to people if I encounter them. Like I wrote
mm,
a letter to my old youth group. I was a youth pastor when I was 22. And I don't remember, like I was never really a very good Christian. Like I was always sort of the one that, like I remember back in the renewal days, and I know you know what I mean by that, but like when
mhm,
there was a lot of like energy in the churches and people were getting these things called manifestations where they'd like cluck like chickens and they'd like holler spontaneously. Or I remember
mhm.
this one girl, every time she said she got like, she felt the Holy Spirit, she'd like buckle forward. And I never got that. I was
Oh.
always very suspicious. Totally ridiculous now. Um, but
Mm,
so I apologized to them and they all wrote back and said, you didn't ever hurt us,
mm,
which was really nice to hear.
mhm,
But I think there is space for making amends, like, to use AA language, like making amends to the people that you hurt,
mhm,
to just name it and say, that was wrong. I shouldn't have, I'm sorry if I made you feel like that. But shame I am wrong, that's
That's
something
living
that
in it.
drives religion. That's living in it. Yeah.
Right, right.
And so I think it's helpful to just like say, how long am I going to feel this guilt? I'm not saying this to you in
Hmm.
particular, but if someone was struggling with guilt, just say, how long am I going to let myself feel this guilt, feel
Hmm.
this wrongness that I perpetuated? And then when is it going to be enough?
Hmm.
When do I get to like move forward
Hmm.
and just be free and know that that was a season in my life and it's over now?
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm encouraged when I listen back to some of the, we're on episode 26 now, and I listen back to some of the episodes, and I'm like, I'm not bashing, I'm not like angry, and I'm proud of that. Like I've already worked through that. I'm not mad, I'm not angry. I'm just curious. I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm curious about what gets us into these positions in the first place,
Mhm.
and then how do we get out of them, and then how do we get whole?
Mhm.
And what I'm realizing as I'm talking to different people at different journeys, and the intent of this podcast was never to talk about any of this stuff. It was me and my sister. We would just talk all the time, and we would say, "Let's do a podcast," and we'll just hit record, and then all of a sudden it starts to take this, for now anyway, take this kind of road. And I mean, it was a huge part of my past, so it is something that interests me.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I'm just just more curious, and also what I find I feel compelled to press on with people is like, what are you so afraid of? Like, there's still, I can sense this fear of offending God, and like, oh, he's going to strike me down. Like,
Mhm.
I'm out of it, but I still sense this like underlying fear about talking out against the Lord's anointed, or this
Mhm.
this stuff called the bride of Christ. And I'm just like, I put this question to Todd, who was on a previous one, and he won't mind if I'm bringing it up because it's live on the podcast. And I said, so Todd, if God came back, if there was a second coming, and if he came back, do you think he would go into these churches and hang out? And this is, Todd, who spent his whole life working for the ministry. And he's like, no, he wouldn't. He'd go to the margins. He'd go to the prostitutes and to the homeless. And I'm like, so why are we building this house that we know he's not going to spend the night in? Why are we spending all this time building when we know if he comes again, he's like, yeah, beautiful home and all, but I'm out. I'm not staying there. And yet we keep plugging away, or people keep plugging away at it. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that, folks will say in one hand, I don't know. I just sense this. It takes a long time, and maybe in what you're doing now as a profession, you see this a lot. It takes a long time for people to be able to have the courage to call a spade without fear of being reprimanded.
Mhm.
Um, I lived for years thinking, because I went hardcore into what we call the world in worldliness, and I went hard into it, and
The world.
like recoiled massively. And I hate that spiritual lingo and all of that, and I often would say, I'm just waiting for God to strike me down, and he never did. He
Mhm.
actually blessed me. um, but yeah, I don't know. Do you experience that with your clients, of this kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, because what we're essentially dealing with here is the nervous system. And so if someone is in a toxic relationship where or a codependent relationship where something bad will happen if they show up authentically in that relationship, then they don't feel safe. And so when we don't feel safe, when we feel like there's a threat, our bodies, it's reflexive, it's not even conscious. Our bodies go into a nervous system response. And that nervous system response is very primal. Like it works best, say, in the forest. If there was a cougar that came out, my body, without my brain even really deciding, my body would just reflexively go into a nervous system response. And the purpose of that is to get me out of danger. So it sends me into fight or flight. So my, like, there are physiological things that happen in the body. My heart starts pumping blood into like my large muscles and away from my extremities. So sometimes when we're afraid, our fingertips will go cold and our toes will get kind of numb. And it will send off cortisol and adrenaline that rushes through our body and goes, and the electrical currents of the brain, if they did a brain scan, you would see a lot of like things lighting up that would make us fast and strong and also really tunnel visiony. So we can just get out of there. And it takes attention away from things like curiosity, creativity, connectedness, expansive thinking. So it makes us less able to see the big picture. And if, say, we're in the wild and we see a predator and our bodies determine that we can, maybe not outrun the predator, but we can fight it off, it will have more courage and more like oomph to just pick up a stick and start like beating that cougar over the head, right? But if our bodies go like split second determination, that thing is too fast for me, that thing is too strong for me, our bodies will literally start to close down. It's like a curling inward. It's a going numb. It's a shutdown. And the purpose and nature of the freeze response is kind of twofold. It's one, I don't look so threatening to the predator that's pursuing me. And so maybe the predator will like back down a little and get distracted, and then I'll be able to just like zip away. And then the second thing is that it just makes us numb, so that if we are consumed by a wild animal, we don't feel so much. But what this looks like in people in psychologically harmful situations is we go into depression, we go into paralysis, we go into like a freeze state is very much like, depression, shutdown, numbness, compliance. And so all of that to say that those mechanisms are at play in religion that gives us toxic messages about, if you don't do this, you will be a disappointment to God. If you do this, you are choosing to go against the Lord's blessing. If you do this, you might be left behind. Or you might be, going down the wrong path and your very soul is at stake. So those are threats, psychological threats, just the same to our nervous system as a wild animal. The nervous system responds to real or perceived threat with a nervous system response. So it's interesting to look at religious messages through that lens and kind of track that, because I can track it back to messages maybe when I was 7 in Sunday school, of like just being told that I had to do certain things. I had to say the prayer. I had to believe, even if it wasn't authentic. I had to like make sure I believed. I remember when I was about 9 or 10, I saw Billy Graham preaching on a television set at my grandmother's house. Oh my gosh. Like if you ever watch Billy Graham videos on YouTube, it's appalling. He was recently on the cover of a People magazine. Like so many people love Billy Graham. His message is, sorry, hands are tied. God loves you so much, but like you're going to go to hell forever unless you sign on this dotted line and believe to these things and accept this.
Yeah.
And that is a threat. That is coercion.
Yeah, hellfire and brimstone. Yeah.
That is coercion. That is not a choice. And so in those spaces where we're surrounded by people agreeing to that, our nervous systems go into a fight or flight, maybe freeze, and we either leave or we agree to it, because you can't stay in those spaces unless you agree to those things. You wouldn't belong. You wouldn't get invited to the potlucks. you wouldn't get invited to things, right? So, there's this wonderful book called My Grandmother's Hands. It's about racialized trauma. by an author named Resmaa Menakem. And he said, and I love this so much, I think about this all the time. He says, trauma unmetabolized over time in an individual becomes personality. Trauma unmetabolized over time in a group becomes culture.
It's going to take me a while to marinate on those ones.
Mm-hmm. Trauma unmetabolized over time. So trauma would be anytime our nervous systems become overwhelmed and can't digest that, can't process that, and return to a sense of well-being. And I know that's kind of a lot for this conversation. Most of the conversations I'm having are about trauma, but...
Right. Trauma over time is what, sorry?
So trauma unmetabolized over time, we don't metabolize that trauma, and actually process it and come back into our own sense of well-being. Trauma unmetabolized over time in an individual becomes personality.
Yeah.
So suddenly we're like, this is how we behave. This is how we act. It's our personality now.
Yeah.
That's what's happening in religious spaces. We're not metabolizing that we're not allowed to show up authentically. And instead, we're moving into a freeze state, or actually a fawn state, which is the fourth response. That's part freeze and part people pleasing. That's for another conversation. But so at any rate, we're not metabolizing, and now it's become our personality. Trauma unmetabolized over time in a group becomes culture. So now we have a whole bunch of people not metabolizing their trauma, not returning to their genuine, authentic self, living in a culture that is doing this.
Yeah, we see that in the world big time, especially
we do.
After the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so blaringly obvious. Yeah, I mean, I have, you're pressing on some nerves in me, I definitely still have to move through some trauma. My wife knows it. I after I left the Kamloops experience, I had chronic insomnia for 10 years.
Wow.
Suicidal. I mean, it's like living hell. 2-3 hours sleep a night max for 10 years.
Oh.
And I wouldn't blame it all on that. I mean, I think it was that, and it was also, yeah, it was all of that, and then the trauma of coming out of it, and then the confusion of how to redefine my life. Like, what does it all mean? And putting like the castle just fell to dust, and then I had to rebuild it, and I didn't have the right blueprint, and it was just chaos.
We have to completely find a new center of gravity after that.
Yeah. And for me, one of the biggest things that I've had to struggle with, and I still struggle with it, is intimacy with other human beings. Like I betrayal is I felt real when my personal experience was different than everyone has a different experience, but I felt so much betrayal.
Yeah.
Because everything I've worked for is just gone like that, just because I choose one thing that doesn't agree with you. I choose this path, and yeah, and it keeps coming up because what we went through with this pandemic was the same thing. And I don't want to talk too much about that, but it touched on that nerve.
Yeah, the compliance thing.
Just the compliance, but people turning their back, and the lack of.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, it really touched on that nerve for me, and so
such division in that time, eh?
Yeah, and so my response is to lone wolf it. You don't need everybody, don't need people, which isn't how we're created. We're created for community. And I can feel that more and more in my life. Like the human beings need other human beings. However much we try to fight it.
Yeah.
I wonder whether what draws you to church in the first place? Is it community, or is it your need for your hunger for faith or for God. I wonder if it's community is the first trigger that pulls you into those.
Yeah, I wonder too. And along the same lines as what you were just sharing, for me, one of the things I really realized was problematic is I didn't really know how to build community or even make friends, because my whole life, I would just have to show up at a church meeting and there were friends and everybody had the same values. I didn't even have to learn how to build the muscle of, you know,
Putting the work
like
in.
putting the work in and like being vulnerable and saying like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Like that was all done for us. That was handed to me on a silver platter.
Mm-hmm.
And so after I left, I remember having for a very long time having this visceral, but did I say that word right?
Visceral.
Visceral feeling of like, where is everybody? Where are all the people? Like we were talking at the beginning
Mm.
about people crashing on the living room floor all the time. Like, where is everybody? Because I was so used to going to a church meeting or,
Mm.
a building and they were there and I
Mm.
didn't have to put the work in. And that still affects me to this day. I have to sometimes shake my head and go, okay, like time to make a new friend, time to talk to a stranger, time to be
Mm.
vulnerable and say like, hey, do you want to hang out? I really like you. And then risk them going, no, I'm too busy. And then
Mm.
feeling the hurt of that.
So
That's been a
you
huge thing.
really, and have you found that with your other clients that because I've never heard that from anyone. I mean, that's been an
Really?
internal um, journey of mine. Yeah, this
Yeah,
kind
I
of.
have a PDF. I have a PDF that I give out called How to Make Friends.
So it's a thing.
It's a thing. Yeah.
So why is that a thing? Like what? How did that happen?
I mean, I think I like the expression, like we learn to take the elevator instead of the stairs in a lot of areas of our development. So we're developing in our life these muscles of like creating community, creating friendships, finding meaning,
Mm.
finding like deciding what our purpose is. And those were kind of like co-opted by church. We were told what should have meaning. We were told what should have, be valuable in our life. We were given so many things. Like, I mean, this is the big one that people miss, just music, like being able to show up and sing in a group. Beautiful thing to do.
Mm.
Where else can you really go and sing in a group? It's not very common, but in church, it's really common. So people get used to being able to show up and sing songs and join their voices with other voices, which is in itself a beautiful human thing to do.
And you don't have to be that good.
And you don't have to be that good.
First time
You
I
can even
played
be
bass was
terrible.
in front of 5,000 people at Toronto Airport because the bass player got stuck in traffic and I could barely. They're like, that's fine. Get up
That's
there.
fine. Mediocre's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't learn to build the muscles of certain things. I think that's why.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it's that and my just fear of trusting or
I had
something.
that
Like
too.
something really traumatic happened 3 times or twice. Happened twice in my life, and the afterburn of that is just this constant struggle with. I drive away from interactions and I'll text someone and be like, sorry, man, I felt like I talked too much. And he'll be like, dude, what are you talking about? Just hanging out. And I'm still kind of like making up for that. Like, are we okay? Did I do something wrong? I'm still remedial in my understanding of what just a friendship. I've been married 3 times and most of my marriages were really hard work. Well, my first one, I don't know. It was so short. It's like I don't even consider it really a proper marriage. But my second one was fiery and all over, and we had 2 kids together. And, the Tara, who I'm with right now, I remember she was the first woman I'd ever met that just accepted me for me. I'm very creative, so I'm always doing something, fixing something, writing a song, doing whatever it is. And I would keep going up to her and be, is it okay that I'm over here doing that? And she'd be like,
Mm,
dude, like, I love that about you. Like, yeah, I'm fine. Or we just drive for hours and sometimes say nothing. And I would feel this like
mm,
nervous energy around me, like, I'm not being a very good partner right now because I'm not doing the work. It was always work, 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 right?
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
and all my other relationships were like heavy on the work, and you're not good enough. And I think in the church too, it was that. And so just having a natural, free flowing relationship or a
mhm,
friendship where I
mhm,
can go one day and just talk all about me because I'm just going through something, and then drive away from that
mhm,
and feel like, oh, that's just friendship. I still
mhm.
really struggle with that. I'm like,
Yeah.
I find myself apologizing and backpedaling.
Yeah. Do you think that was because, well, I know that your community that you were in Kamloops was pretty high on the surveillance, like spiritual
Surveillance.
surveillance.
Yeah.
Like you were always being watched and judged. I saw that
Yeah.
happening.
I mean, I was right up with the old leadership, and I was living with the pastor and his wife, and I
Mhm,
mean, I was all in it, right? And
mhm.
um, I don't know.
That
I probably need to come see you and work through it. I mean, I've worked through a lot of it, but I've suppressed a lot of it,
Mm,
and
mhm,
yeah, yeah. My whole
wow.
first album when I came out and built a band was called Well Behaved and Working For You, which was a sarcastic statement. And that was my therapy, really. Most of the
Yeah.
songs on that album, most people are watching it in a nightclub, don't know what on earth. They think I'm singing
Yeah.
about a boy and a girl, but it ain't that.
Yeah. I know I put out a little album called Little Grey House in 2006. And I just I was just writing poem songs is what I was thinking. But now I listen to that album and I was completely processing the loss of my faith
Yeah.
through kind of like breakup songs, I guess,
Yeah. It is
and
a
didn't even
breakup.
realize it at the time. Yeah, yeah, it's a loss.
When I think of myself like at some of those worship meetings and how much of myself I laid bare, like you give in those some of those meetings, you gave everything and more, right? I mean,
Mhm,
really, really, really vulnerable and really like just emptying yourself.
mhm,
And then coming away from that and thinking, was that all real? And what was that? And
mhm,
it's like really fucks you up. I mean, it's a
mhm,
big deal.
mhm. I mean, I
And
think that's why I brought up the piece about the higher expansive states needing to be grounded by the lower ones,
mm,
because there are expansive states that we can access. We can access them through chanting, through psychedelics,
mhm,
through heavy exercise, through really high energetic states in a group. And those are real states.
mhm,
I would say that they're not necessarily what we were they don't mean what we were told they meant, which was that the Holy Spirit was in our midst, or, the Shekinah glory of God was filling the place, or whatever. There's different ways that people labeled that. But now I know that those expansive states are not unique to Christian spaces or worship spaces or devotional spaces.
no,
They are accessible to all humans, and we really, really need those expansive states to be grounded by the lower states.
mhm,
Feeling safe, feeling like we belong to the world, feeling like we can process our emotions as they come up and that they're good, feeling like we can act when we need to. If something feels wrong, we can act. That was definitely something that was very
boundaries, right?
tampered with. Yeah, boundaries, exactly. And knowing our own limits and being able to honor our own limits and
Mhm,
also make decisions. And because those expansive states are really real. But
mhm,
did they mean what we, like, did they have the meaning that we gave them? I don't think so.
no,
I think it's important, and tell me what you think about this, but like, I think it's important to be able to differentiate, to be able to pull those two things apart and say, yes, we experienced expansive states and they felt good sometimes.
mhm,
No, that does not legitimize the other stuff that happened.
mhm.
or even the meaning that was placed on those experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really important for me to pull those two things apart.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to throw the baby out. I mean, people say to me, do you believe that there's a God? I've got lots of friends who don't, and and I just say I can't deny that because I have felt God. I've been physically healed by, I don't know. Before this conversation, I was driving and just thinking and knowing we were going to talk about this stuff. And, I still want to think about God without the picture that was put before me, this painting that was given to me, even the word God kind of makes me feel a bit dodgy.
Yeah, it
I like
should.
to call it the creator, or whatever it is, but there is something there and I can't deny it. For me personally, like, I don't
Yeah.
believe in evolution. I don't believe that this world it was an accident. There's too many miracles for me personally. And that's just my personal thing. It's in my core. I mean, I've been in desperate, lonely, awful times, and I felt some kind of presence with me. I was just talking to my oldest daughter, Jasmine, who's in her 20s, and she just got back from Shambhala up in Nelson, and she's really into that kind of rave scene. And I was in Vancouver, and I had lunch with her, and it was just like amazing because all my kids are very, very different. And Jasmine, I've always wished for her just to come out of her shell. Like, she feels like this little puppy in the corner and just doesn't lets life happen, but doesn't really go and grab life. And she said, Dad, I've been to so many festivals, but Shambhala is like, it's like a retreat. Have you heard of that festival?
Yeah, I have.
Big rave
Yeah.
festival, but it's in the forest, and there's lots of meditation and different things.
Yeah, it sounds beautiful.
And she talked, and I was like, it was like watching this flower open up. And she was reading me her journal, and it was like this
Mm.
spiritual awakening that happened to her,
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
to say that, back 15 years ago, I'd have said, no, that's like a deception. What you've experienced there is not God. God isn't anywhere near Shambhala. He is here. What you've experienced is a phony experience. And
Mm.
oh my God, I can't
Well, of
believe I used
course
to
you would say that
yeah.
because that's what you were taught. That
But to
was
see my
the
daughter,
pervasive thinking.
and I'm like, she's, yeah, this crazy thing that you
Mm-hmm.
can't quantify. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
remember being on stage on Richards, playing a song about losing my dad. It was a rock and roll song, and we were playing there. And I looked, and it was, we were in the height of touring band and trying to make it in music. And I looked around at my drummer, and I was like, I literally felt like I was levitating. I felt like my feet were off the ground because I was just in the moment. I was like living
Mm-hmm.
that song.
Yeah, music is powerful.
And I had those
Yeah.
experiences in church too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there is those threads that I can pull out of it. But the
But
detangling part, I guess, is,
and maybe you would have had more of those experiences if you'd had more, like if Jasmine went to Shambhala, is it called?
yeah, Shambhala,
Shambhala.
Shambhala.
Um, Maybe you would have had those experiences anyway in a different context
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
instead of tangled up with religious doctrines. So I teach a support group called Reclaiming Your Life After Toxic Religion through the Center of Trauma Resolution and Recovery that I work for. And we do like pretty early in the group, we do like a pie chart. And because a lot of people come feeling desperately homesick for religion and yet not being able to go back there at all. They
Hmm.
just can't stomach it anymore. And that is like really hard for people.
Yeah.
And they're confused. Why can't I go back when there were so many beautiful things? And so we do this pie chart and we break apart like, what is it? Like, what do you miss? What is it?
Mm.
And it's wild to see all of those parts separate. Like, okay, well, I miss community and I miss music and I miss like just interacting with little old ladies. And I missed, just being able to like express myself, like raised arms or like hollering, like, okay, so emotional expression. And I missed, the really bad coffee at the back or whatever, just hanging out with like a friend at the back, drinking the terrible coffee. And then I missed like, even though some of the conversations were really bothersome, like it was good to sort of like have deep conversations
Mm.
because our culture and our society doesn't really do that much. It's
Yeah, that's
very
true.
like,
Pithy.
it's very shallow. It's very surface.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is
And
something. Yeah, we used to have there was intellectual space there.
yeah, and even an emotional space and like issues of what Jungian therapists would call the soul. Like we don't talk about the soul in our culture.
Mm-hmm.
We are very surface. And so we don't have a lot of spaces where we can really dig into issues of the soul. And so even though sometimes those conversations dipped into some toxic areas and brought in some pretty harmful belief systems, I think that felt good for especially people who are hungry for that.
Mm-hmm.
Because not everybody wants that. I mean, my dad is just like, he's just happy to like work in the shop and like work on his car in the driveway and like put his house up for sale and relocate and go to Arizona in the winter. He doesn't have a deep yearning. Lots of people just don't have deep yearnings for soul things. And that's fine. I
I
think,
think it's their first time around.
yeah, maybe.
I do.
Yeah.
I feel like this whole thing, which would be so illegal to think about, but this old soul,
Heresy.
this old soul statement that you hear people say, like there's you go to the bar, and you got the dude that you want to talk about something spiritual, and it just like goes right over their head, and then you talk to another person that like latch onto it right away. I think that
Mm-hmm.
we have lived before,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
some of these old souls that they've kind of get through levels of like, your classic jock, you know, just wants to talk about
Yeah.
football and have
Yeah.
beer. Like, I
Yeah.
just like, what? I just want to get deep all the time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So do you find with those folks then that are working through this, that what's the goal? I mean, to make peace with it all and to be whole, but do you find that people do want to reintegrate and go back into this, or would that be like you're just going back into potentially abusive situation again, or do you go up with your armor on and
I mean, I think that by the time they reach out to me or a practitioner at the center, I think they've reached a point where they realize that going back to what they had is not an option.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I think they would. Lots of people come to me and they say, I keep missing it. And then I go back and then I'm like, I can't be here anymore.
Yeah.
And so then they reach out for support. And so, um, I mean, once in a while, I have someone who finds just a really healing space. It's like, just it's maybe Christian based, but it's very focused on outreach and music, and it's very like affirming and accepting. And
Mm.
then they like being there.
Mhm.
And I know for me, I don't think I could ever go back to a space that affirmed a belief like we are broken unless we have a savior. I don't believe that anymore for myself.
Mhm. That we're
Um,
born a sinner.
that we're born despicable and broken. I don't believe that. And I think it's very harmful for our development to believe that. But if you want to believe that, you can.
Mhm.
Not you personally, but someone else.
Yeah.
I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to try to convince you to not. And if you want to be in a space like that, you can. I can't. And so sometimes people find really healing community spaces, and sometimes people just make their own. Like I have a friend, or sorry, I have a client who had to dig really hard into this. Like, how am I going to get community now? And she joined like a nature volunteer thing, and then she joined a quilting club, and like
Mm.
she's just going for it. She's just joining things, and she's
Yeah, yeah,
really happy now.
yeah.
She's more herself. She just loves being herself now. She's like, no one's going to kick me out because I'm a bad quilter.
Mhm. Yeah, my mom's in England, and she's dealing, literally, I was talking to her on the weekend, and she's like, I'm going back to church now. And she used to be a worship leader. She was on some of Jeremy Sinnett's albums, and
Mm.
planted 2 vineyards in England, and
Mm.
with my dad, who's now passed away, and massive trauma in her life from it. But
Mm.
she still feels this draw back to it. And she's like, I'm so confused there. I don't know how to just be
Mm.
myself. I feel like I need to tell them my history. And I firmly believe that, like one question I wanted to ask you was like, do you think church can work? Because I know my personal feelings are that humans are just not trustworthy enough in that space. Because I feel very rarely have I seen leadership that just doesn't get corrupted by power. And I remember when we moved to Vancouver Island, Tara and I, because through the pandemic we just lost a lot of friends, and not the only reason, but part of the reason. And when we came here, there was a potluck going on, a potluck group in Courtney, and we went, and there was like 35 people, and they all kind of, you know, and we sat in a circle after we ate potluck, and this was our first time coming to Courtney, and there's all these people, and it was like, wow. And we all had something in common. And we sat in a circle, and we went around the circle, and they went around the circle, and you held a rock or whatever, the piece of whatever it was, and you had like a 2-minute share, and then you would hand the rock to someone else, and then they would share. And man, did it ever trigger me.
Did
Like,
it?
oh, big time. It was like being in an organized setting where there was rules, like just very simple rules.
Mm.
Try
Mhm.
not to use I statements, try not to go on too long. Remember, there's a lot of us here. Like, even those rules were enough to trigger me. Um, uh, you know,
And
just
is
this.
that because it reminded you of something that was in the past,
Well, I
or
think
because you
that
didn't like it?
no, because it was this reminded me, yeah, of I mean, church is very structured, right? There's rules, a lot of rules, especially in the churches we were
Mhm.
involved in. And so anything that has that form of kind of
Mhm.
like and there's a kind of a leader,
Mhm.
there almost has to be in that situation. Hey guys, let's wrap it up now. Let's sit in the living room. We're going to put our thing in a
Yeah.
circle. I mean, it's not like heavy leadership, but inside, I would be lying to you if I said I wasn't doing this like inventory. I'm like, okay, what's going to happen here? This thing's going to start to get bigger. They're going to have to move to a bigger
Mhm.
space, and all of a sudden, it's going to become a thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember being approached by people as soon as they find out in church circles that you have any kind of talent, like you can sing or you can play guitar, you're kind of headhunted very quickly. And I
Mhm.
remember when I kind of was coming out of church, but I was still kind of wanting to be in. And this lady came up to me in Steveston, and she's like, "Hey, we're having a little house church on Sunday afternoon. We're going to have wine, edgy, you know, and cheese, and we're just going to talk. And why don't you come and just play some music? And just no big deal." And I kind of shared that thing to her, and I was like, if it's a really good thing, then more people are going to come. And then what's going to happen? Then you're going to need a building. And then what's going to happen? You're going to need an offering to be able to pay the rent in the building. And then someone in your little group is going to do something that colored outside the lines of you know, what you hadn't set in play. And then you're going to have to discipline them or talk to them. And then all of a sudden, it all starts. This whole thing
Mm.
where
Mhm.
you've got an us and them, And so
Mhm.
I just don't feel it can work. I mean,
Well, it feels important to name that that would be the case, whether it's a yoga community or a Hindu community. That's
There have to be
groups.
rules, I guess.
Yeah, like, so a lot, I would say probably the top two symptoms of people unwinding religious trauma is they don't know how to feel safe because their safety was in the belief systems. I am a child of God. I believe in Jesus, so I'm saved. Like, and so that's their nervous system calms with those beliefs. And now that they don't have those beliefs, their nervous system is riled up
Mm-hmm.
and they're not even aware of why. And then the second thing that I work with a lot is people saying, I don't consciously believe in hell, but like, what if I'm wrong? So, what if I'm wrong and how do I feel safe? So, I got a client who came to me and she said, I don't know how to feel safe anymore. And what if they're wrong or they're right and I'm wrong? But she was from a Hindu community.
Mm.
It was this beautiful community that two leaders started. They opened like kind of I guess it was like a live-in residence with organic gardens, and it was just gorgeous. She showed me some stuff on YouTube, and I'm like, I would sign up for that community. I would be there in a second.
Mm-hmm.
But then when she got really into it, it was very much about denying the self and obliterating the ego,
Mm.
and to the point where it caused some damage, and she literally disappeared and like had no sense of who she was by the end of it. So I think that what you're talking about is like groups. Like, can groups ever be safe? And I think the answer is yes, but they have to be really healthy. And I think there's a huge risk of groups becoming unsafe. And then you have to be allowed to say, this isn't for me anymore.
Mm.
Like if I'm going to a yoga class, and the yoga teacher is like doing something that doesn't work for me, I am able to say, this class doesn't work for me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's high control religion with those
Mm.
aspects of the bite model of authoritarian power and control, we
Mm.
don't feel safe to say this isn't for me anymore.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets dangerous.
Yeah. The podcast that came out this morning was with Tara Bianca, and she's got a lot of different skills, but she was heavily involved in the Daime movement, which is ayahuasca, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and the same thing. And I was shocked because I had no idea that she had come out of that and like got really kind of abused by it, which is, but yeah. So I think it can work. I've seen it. There's a men's group in town called the MKP, Mankind Project, and I went to, it's just, a men's group. And I went to one of their intensive weeks. It was over in Powell River. And there, for the first time, I saw real leadership modeled. And it really moved me. I saw a lack of ego. I saw strong men being strong when it was their time to be strong. And then those same men sitting down beside me in another process, being so incredibly vulnerable that it inspired me to be more vulnerable. I couldn't believe how vulnerable they were being. And they're not perfect, but it was so impactful to me to see this organization with, for the most part, real proper leadership. Like if you want to go from point A to point B, you need to lead to get there. I understand that. But
yeah, someone needs to hold the container.
Totally. But the ego and the untouchableness becomes a problem, right? Like this power, and it needs to be accountability. And in that men's organization, there is hardcore accountability. Like you will get called out if you're the guy leading, and and so there's this humility that comes with it. Everyone's on the same level. So yeah,
Sounds like you experienced it as a really healing space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Beautiful.
I stopped going to the men's group because there's some things of it that still trigger me. And I got this, there's a group, a chat, and they said, hey, we notice you haven't come for a long time. We just want you to know we love you, man. And whenever you're ready to come back, we're here. Like, no big deal. And I'm like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have agency.
this
And
free flow.
And I mean, what I'm hearing in that is you have agency and you still belong, even if you choose not to come.
Yeah.
You can still go back and you can still belong. Your belonging is not conditional.
Also, Rick Leaf said, right, in that interview,
oh, really?
Well, yeah, in that podcast, he was like, how about we have church and when people come, we say, hey, it's nice to have you here, but when it's time to go, we'll bless you. You know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Free to come, free to go.
They didn't like that very much.
No.
Cool. I guess we're running out of time.
Yeah.
I can hear banging and crashing.
Oh, can you?
It's fine.
Well, great to have this conversation with you.
Yeah. Are you still playing lots of music?
Yeah, I'm actually just releasing an album next week called Songs for a Quiet Day. And I have a concert on Hornby Island on Monday night. So
Nice.
I play now and again. I get easily overwhelmed with the whole music career thing, so I keep it pretty small. Yeah. But I am doing it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
What about you? Still play?
No. I broke my wrist, so that really does hinder me from playing guitar. And the kind of personality I am is a little odd. It's like when I'm into something, I am hardcore. So when I was trying to make a career in music, it was all I was doing. And when I realized that the destination wasn't going to happen where I was heading, and I had the third baby on the way and all of that, I pulled all of that creative energy out and put it into building a company. And people are really perplexed. Like, do you still sing or play guitar? I'm like, nope, haven't written a song since.
Really?
And I'm a little bit fearful of that intensity that happened to me. I would not let a song go until it was perfect. Wrestle it and wrestle it and wrestle it. And it was awesome. I mean, I had some amazing times, and I some of the best times of my life for sure. And I'm proud of the music that we wrote, but, there's a bit of trepidation about it. And I've had to learn how to just jam and have fun with it. For me, it was, I have a hard time finding that fun part is a little hard to find. It's always work kind of. Where are we going? What's the plan here? Are you writing a song? No, we're just going to play around a fire and just whatever. I'm like, oh, how do you do that?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't. Yeah.
Yeah. I hear that. I hear you. And that would be interesting to just examine in yourself. I'm curious if that does come from that aspect of religion that told us that everything that we had to do had to have profound meaning. The stakes were so high. And that if you just tried to play music, you might notice a belief that goes something like, I can't just be here enjoying myself with my guitar. I'm not telling you, I'm just saying I'm curious. Like I'd want to press on that if I was working with you. Like, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, doing things for enjoyment for me is a struggle. Just, yeah, it's a struggle. It's always purpose.
Yeah. And that could be a consequence of our indoctrination.
Yeah.
I think similar indoctrinations that we've had. Yeah. Often when I work with people who voice that, because that's a common complaint that I hear, I'll say, what if you just set the timer for 5 minutes and just sat there and breathed? And, if you wanted to write in a journal or draw in a sketchbook, you could do that too. But just allowed yourself to have that 5 minutes and notice what comes up. Notice what comes up in your system, like telling you, oh, I can't just sit here. If it has something to do with worth or value, I think it's really powerful to get curious about those underlying beliefs that are really unconscious in us. That's the biggest part of religious trauma, is that these belief systems they're in our subconscious now. They're not even in our 5% conscious mind. They're in the 95%, like the iceberg,
the fabric,
the part under the water. Yeah. So we're not necessarily aware of them on a day-to-day basis, but there's a lot there. It can be really painful and also kind of just really fun and interesting to explore that. But
Mhm.
anyway, yeah. Um,
Yeah, I was
I
riding
do
my
have to.
mountain bike. I went to the top of Cumberland before this podcast, and
Where do you live, Joby?
I live in Seal Bay.
Okay, you're really close to me.
Where do you live?
I'm in Courtney right now.
Okay, so like I'm in Courtney, but
I thought
ba-
you were in Vancouver.
oh really? No, I've been here 2.5
Hmm.
years. I live on a
Oh, okay.
5 acre farm
Wild.
here in Courtney.
Oh, amazing. Okay.
Yeah. So are you
Neat.
in Courtney, in downtown Courtney, or are you in the countryside?
In kind of the countryside of Courtney, between Courtney and Cumberland.
Well, that's where. Oh, okay. Because I'm between Courtney and Merville.
Okay.
So
Nice.
right on the outskirts of Seal Bay Park.
Oh, that's good to know. Maybe I'll run into you
Yeah,
downtown.
it's kind of funny. But yeah, I was riding to the top of Cumberland Mountain this morning, and it wasn't
Mm.
until I was halfway up of that climb, which is an hour and a half climb. Halfway up, I suddenly looked up and saw the trees. Actually saw the trees. I was like, "Geez, Joey, come on!" Like I was by myself riding, right?
Yeah.
You've been riding for 40 and just in your head.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
an hour or so in, I just looked up and I just took a second and I actually
You
saw.
landed there. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the trees and I was like,
Yeah. Well, at least you got there.
totally. Battle won.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Well,
Great.
thank you. I'm sure we could talk for hours about this subject. And
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot here. Just branch off to a million different things, but
Yeah. Well,
thanks for having me.
yeah. And then send me all of your info and I'll put that in the show
Okay.
notes and
Sure.
maybe some more clients will come your way. My mom being one of them. Maybe me.
Well, since you are local, I will say that I'm going to do a support group in the fall for people in the Comox Valley. So,
Okay.
yeah, if anyone's listening.
Cool. All right.
All right. Take care, Joby.
Thank you. Talk
Okay.
soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.